How many Mr. Pickles will it get? Let's see if this cabinet has what it takes.
Video Game Vegas.
He's so cute.
Friends, Video Game Vegas. And this is my review of Arcade1Up's Namco Pac-Man Legacy Edition. Now there is a new version of a Pac-Man Legacy Edition for this year, one with 14 games and no riser. But this review is for Arcade1Up's first Pac-Man Legacy Edition, the specific SKU with 12 games, a riser, and a light-up marquee. I base my arcade cabinet reviews on 10 categories, which you'll find detailed in the text below. For each positive in a category, or more positive than negative in a category, I'll score it a Mr. Pickle. The more Mr. Pickles it gets, of course, the better. Based upon the total score, and my overall thoughts, I'll recommend if you should get it, vet it, or in other words, put it through its paces in person before you buy, or forget it. A couple of disclaimers before I get into my review. All my product reviews are based solely upon the item or items I receive. Some may get the same product and have no issues. Some may have more issues than I did. And maybe I get no issues at all, my hope for any product. Or maybe a majority of the specific product performs or presents differently than the one I got. But when it comes down to it, what I get is what I review. I don't acquiesce to excuses like, I must have gotten a bad one, or a good one, or ruminate shipping issues if I had it shipped, though I may note something. But plainly put, I'm an advocate for good quality with a strong emphasis towards quality control. And if a company wants their product seen favorably, then they need to make this a paramount part of their philosophy and put it to action, so what every customer receives is an acceptable, if not preferred exceptional, experience every time. Some may think it unfair not to put a more significant emphasis on the law of averages, and I appreciate that opinion. But my reviews are meant to tell my experience on exactly what I got, good or bad. Second, the footage presented in my videos of Arcade Cabinet's iReviewer Showcase may contain updated parts, decorations, software, or other bits and bobs not included in a standard purchase. Please make sure to check advertised listings or reach out to retailers or companies to confirm complete contents in box. Now let's get to it. Pac-Man. Arguably the most iconic arcade game and arcade mascot of all time. I remember my first time meeting Pac-Man in his very first arcade game in the middle of a lobby at a movie theater. This was before dedicated mini arcade areas in theaters became prevalent. People were crowded around it, but I eventually was able to get close enough to see it in all its glory. The colors, the sounds, the animation. Something so new and extraordinary, with gameplay instantly understandable, and giving off a deceptive vibe that it might be easy to master. A marvel of programming and artistic genius, a true sight to behold. But beyond all the appearance stuff and gameplay, something intangible, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, brewed inside me. This feeling would eventually be dubbed Pac-Man Fever. You see, Pac-Man wasn't just a game, it was a phenomenon. Like the massive merchandising juggernaut Star Wars was before it, Pac-Man became the ultimate collectathon. Clothing, dinnerware, lunch pails, trading cards, you name it. If it was a product type, Pac-Man found his way onto it. Heck, I even have a Pac-Man digital phone, and a pair of Pac-Man roller skates my brother got me one Christmas. Pac-Man spawned cartoons, and even had his own rock and pop hit back in the 80s, Pac-Man Fever. Pac-Man was everywhere, and still is. When I first started building my home arcade, back when it was simply known as the bedroom arcade, I knew I eventually wanted a Pac-Man machine in it. I started my collection with two machines, Arcade1Up's Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 and a generic blank canvas 3/4 scale machine I plan to skin as a Berserk cabinet called the iiRcade from a company called Rec Room Masters. It was powered by a Raspberry Pi and would serve as a multicade. The first guest to my arcade was my buddy Ray. Very apropos, because of our many great adventures playing arcade games throughout the years. Upon taking it all in, Ray asked me, "So where's Pac-Man?" I told him to hold that thought and ran down to my video game museum and grabbed my miniature quarter-scale version of Pac-Man I recently purchased from a company called Numskull. Ray looked at it in awe and immediately started playing it. He kept saying over and over again, "I can't get over this machine," and rightly so. What Numskull had created was an extremely accurate version of the first commercial Pac-Man arcade machine. Ray then said to me, "This machine is great, but what you really need is one with full-size controls." I told him that was the plan, but I had to break the bad news to him. I wove my sad tale of the company Arcade1Up, the ones who made the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1 he just attempted to play Tempest on with its horrible dial controller, sans a real arcade spinner. I let him know the company did release a licensed version of Pac-Man at the same size as the Atari cabinet, but unfortunately, they did Pac-Man dirty. I let him know that Arcade1Up and their partners, Namco, decided to release a version with 2 measly games. And to add insult to injury, one of those included games was Pac-Man Plus, one of my least favorite Pac-Man games of all time. Namco and Arcade1Up could have easily knocked this one out of the park. Even with its existing control layout, more Pac-Man games could have been added. And given their other cabs, Arcade1Up could have easily added a few more buttons to the sparse control panel, accommodating even more games, to really celebrate Namco's arcade legacy properly, like they did with Atari. But it was obvious over the years that this was a deliberate anti-consumer strategy, an excuse to sell excessive and redundant hardware by drip-feeding the fewest amount of additional games to each new future iteration. The cabinet upgrade shuffle became a crappy ritual for some, and the whole thing turned into a running joke to many in the home arcade community. Now, my Numskull replication had only one game, that's true. But Arcade1Up 3/4 scale machines are much larger, taking up more real estate. And because I was only planning to have 4, maybe 5 machines total in my home arcade, as I still planned to use the space as a bedroom at the time, I would only consider machines worthy of that space. Not only ones that sparked my nostalgia, but ones that also provided real value and added the most robust experience that made sense per the cabinet's specific control layout. I mentioned to Ray, however, that Arcade1Up did have another Pac-Man product with full-size controls, a very compact device that could easily fit on the small nightstand next to the bed, or even on one's lap, what I now refer to as the infamous Countercade. But the price Arcade1Up was asking for it was absolutely ridiculous, around $230 if memory serves. And I let him know the only way I would even consider that one is if it came way down in price. And I did end up purchasing one when it did go on sale, but the less we talk about that crappy product, the better. The search for a proper licensed Pac-Man experience for my home arcade was now on. And it actually didn't take me long to find what I hoped would be the ultimate Namco home arcade machine. A space-friendly stand-up cabinet called Pac-Man's Pixel Bash. Though a cocktail table version would come out later, as well as a variant with a built-in mini fridge. Crazy. Pac-Man's Pixel Bash brought the real heat when it came to games. Just over 30 in fact, including both Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man on the same cabinet. A feat that still to this day, Arcade1Up has yet to achieve. But with the big game library came a big problem. There were both 4-way and 8-way games on the machine, but there was only one 4-way joystick. Unacceptable, especially given Pixel Bash's high price tag at almost $3,000. Yikes! For that price, or even if a company like Arcade1Up attempted it in a cost-effective way, that issue shouldn't exist. A simple switcher joystick could have been implemented, and it wasn't like they weren't out there. I liked a manual one I saw at the time, where one could pull up on the joystick, give it a twist, and it would switch between 4 and 8-way directions. This was all before the Glenn's Retro Show's electronic switcher, which would have been even cooler. And though Pac-Man's Pixel Bash looks similar in size to an Arcade1Up with a riser, it was deceptively so. Because it's a commercial-grade arcade machine, built with commercial parts, meaning it weighed around 4 times more than an Arcade1Up, and also took up a bigger footprint in overall size. And when it comes to me, I have no interest in owning commercial-grade arcade machines. They're cool for sure, and when in good shape, they are a preferred way for me to play. But the reasons I never entertained even the smallest inkling of an idea of having an actual arcade in my house was because commercial machines are way too heavy, often more expensive when in a condition to my liking, take up too much room to fit enough of them in a limited space where I'd feel like I was in an actual arcade, and the upkeep and sometimes cabinet restorations? Forget it. The only reason I have a home arcade today is due to the brilliant concept Arcade1Up came up with. Building smaller and lighter form factor arcade machines, fashioned after their bigger brethren, plug and play, though unfortunately you do have to put them together first, licensed, and at a consumer-friendly price. But seeing Pac-Man's Pixel Bash gave me the gumption to reach out to Arcade1Up, using this example on how to build a worthy Namco experience, and also to share some of my ideas on ways to further expand their incredible concept. I let Arcade1Up know about Pac-Man's Pixel Bash, and that I would love to see something like it in a consumer-friendly priced Arcade1Up form factor. All the games on the Pixel Bash should be more than capable of running on current Arcade1Up hardware or negligible upgrades, and the only thing that really needed to be addressed was the 4 and 8-way joystick capability, which I then provided 2 suggestions. The switcher joystick I mentioned before, or including 2 joysticks, one 4-way and one 8-way. But I also played devil's advocate and suggested if 30-some games seemed way off from their current business model, then would it be possible to give us a cabinet with at least 12 titles, matching the current offering on their Atari Deluxe? But I went a step further. I suggested if they did decide to go the 12 games route, that I had a radical idea that would push their products to the next level. I suggested adding a feature that would give customers the ability to add more games to their existing cabinets through purchases via a possible online service, or maybe through additional game packs via purchasable USB thumb drives. I let Arcade1Up know that providing options like this would broaden their reach to more customers, allowing for new revenue streams. Because though some may be interested in continually buying cabinets and have the room to do so, others may not. And adding the ability to make money via software transactions as well satisfies more camps. I wanted Arcade1Up to think about the future longevity of their products as people's spaces started filling up. Now, I wasn't referring to only Namco when pitching the ability to add more games to cabinets. I wanted to see this built-in ability added to all their partners' products. Arcade1Up cabinets thus far were limited to one publisher per cab, and each cab could also have a different control panel layout, which could make some games not compatible on certain cabinet configurations. I pitched the idea like this. I suggested each cabinet have the ability to connect to the internet and access an online store. The store would recognize the cabinet's identity and capability by publisher and control panel layout, and would only list purchasable games which applied to both criteria, not just to one. I gave the following examples on how it would work. If one connected their Namco Pac-Man machine to the store, for instance, Ms. Pac-Man and Junior Pac-Man might show up as available games to purchase, while another person with a Capcom Street Fighter cabinet might see Darkstalkers or Final Fight show up. On the other hand, though the Street Fighter cabinet could technically play a game of Pac-Man with its control panel layout, though not ideally due to having only 8-way joysticks, the game Pac-Man wouldn't be made available because it doesn't match the cabinet's publisher. A Capcom cabinet wouldn't have access to Namco games. Also, Rolling Thunder, though a Namco title, wouldn't show up as a purchasable option on the first iteration of Arcade1Up's Pac-Man due to the cabinet's lack of action buttons needed to play the game. Again, both criteria must be met for a game to show up for purchase: publisher and control panel ability. I then suggested that Arcade1Up offer this Namco collection cabinet in multiple artwork choices, so people could really get the cabinet of their dreams. They could start with maybe 5 variants, like a Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Galaga, and Mappy, all loaded with the same 12 popular arcade titles, and with the ability to purchase more downloadable titles, so each customer could craft their own preferred experience. Some might even choose to collect them all to have the look of all of these machines in their home arcade. Now, some may make the argument that this might limit the ability for Arcade1Up to sell more physical hardware, and in some sense that could be a factor. But I believe the new benefits way outweigh the possibility, as Arcade1Up and their partners would make it up, and most likely then some, in additional continual software sales. Not to mention future cabinets with different control schemes would still need to be purchased if customers wanted games not compatible or ideally playable with classic configuration cabinets. And though I didn't pitch this at the time, Arcade1Up would also have to factor in a cabinet's PCB ability, meaning just because a game may match a publisher and cabinet's control scheme, it would also have to have the computing power to run the games well. An example might be, one could have an original Arcade1Up Street Fighter cabinet, but a game like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 wouldn't show up as a purchasable game because the online store would have to factor in a cabinet's PCB capabilities as well, and the one on the Street Fighter cabinet wouldn't have the power to run the game or run it properly. And I'm sure I could come up with other cabinet factors that would determine a game's access to purchase as well. Monitor orientation, anyone? But for now, I'll stick with just the 3. Building an online store infrastructure would allow Arcade1Up and their partners to thrive on 2 fronts instead of 1. Not only would Arcade1Up still have the ability to create and sell more hardware due to downloadable game availability locked to 3 requisite criteria: a publisher, PCB capability, and a cabinet's specific control structure, standard fighting cabinets, 4-player cabinets, light gun cabinets, racing cabinets, flight stick cabinets, etc. But they and their partners would now also benefit from a new revenue stream from software sales. Plain and simple, it's a very consumer and future-forward move, providing options that consider more individual circumstances and, in turn, building a larger customer base. Unfortunately, I never heard back from Arcade1Up regarding my pitch, though I really didn't expect to. And as we see, at least from the making of this video, if one wants more Arcade1Up game offerings, one has to purchase more hardware. Though I did like that they started offering cabinets with same or similar game lineups in more art package choices. I'd like to think I had a small hand in that. But man, does it make me miss a company like iiRcade with its online store. Boy, did we have it good. And so my waiting game for Pac-Man began. I decided to hold out for either Arcade1Up to release a Namco collection cabinet with at least 30 or more games on it, which I knew if it ever happened, would take an unacceptably long amount of time given their slow drip feed history in only adding a few more games to each new iteration of their cabinets. Or I would hold out hope that one day they would take my other suggestion and come out with a cab that allowed one to purchase more games for it via an online store or other means. So why did I end up picking up the Namco Pac-Man Legacy Edition? That answer will soon be revealed. And as the video title also suggests, I'll also be giving my in-person and hands-on observations of the new Arcade1Up Pac-Man and Class of '81 Deluxe cabinets, along with the Pac-Man XL variant. Do they improve upon or stack up against the Namco Legacy I own? We'll find out, as I was fortunate enough to check out the Deluxes at my local Best Buy and the XL at Costco thanks to a fellow coworker who had a membership. Though the XL I played did have a big boot print on the side of it, possibly due to one of the things I'm about to discuss, perhaps? Now, without further ado, let's dive in. The look of the cabinet. Arcade1Up nailed it. This is one beautiful cabinet. And though the riser doesn't continue that classic yellow throughout, I'm so happy with what Arcade1Up came up with, mimicking some of that classic gameplay action. The marquee is lit, and evenly so, and brings me right back to that first time I played Pac-Man in that movie theater, lo those many years ago. The kick plate has a graphic of a coin door, not my favorite look, and I've heard some would have preferred an actual plastic molded coin door, but for me, I would have loved to see the game logos for each of the titles instead, something found on my Atari Deluxe 12-in-1. I love the look of game logos, as they instantly give me nostalgia when I see them. Not having them isn't a big deal, just a slight bummer. The cabinet and riser came with no nicks and scratches, perfect out of the box, just how it should be. As for the deluxe variants of Pac-Man and Class of '81, and the XL variant of Pac-Man, minus the boot print, they're very attractive. I love that they mimic the original commercial arcade design, and fans of plastic molded coin doors can rejoice, as one is found here. Though again, for me, game logos would have been the chef's kiss. Cabinet structure and assembly. Like the other Arcade1Up 3/4 scale cabinets I own, the genius two-piece design, cabinet with a riser to make it taller, is still here. However, the same crappy assembly process is here as well. Luckily, my brother was cool enough to build this one for me, because I always dread wanting more of these because building them sucks. But there are some positive things I want to note about Arcade1Up's classic design versus what they've done with the new variants of the Class of '81 and Pac-Man and XL Pac-Man models. When it comes to the control panel, if anything goes wrong on the Legacy, all I have to do is remove a couple of screws and the panel piece comes right out. On these Deluxe and XL variants specifically, at least from what I've heard reported, their control panel can't be lifted out in this way, but rather, one has to take apart the cabinet itself to remove it. Seriously? What was Arcade1Up thinking? Why would anyone take a brilliant design and accessible function that's worked since the company's inception and replace it with a cumbersome mess? Ugh. I also was curious about the sturdiness of these one-piece designs that didn't require a riser to make them taller. I can tell you with the Pac-Man and Class of 81 Deluxes, these babies do feel like they could tip over with little effort. But for me, a test like this, though telling, isn't as concerning as how a cabinet actually feels while I'm playing it. And I'm happy to report that these new Namco Deluxes feel sturdy enough for me. At no point did I have an issue playing, nor did I feel the machine would tip over. But it is important to note that not every person plays the same way, nor does everyone have the same circumstances. For that reason, overall sturdiness may be an important factor when considering a deluxe. Now with the XL Pac-Man cabinet, it felt much sturdier in my unscientific push test, just as sturdy as my Legacy with a riser. So if you want Arcade1Up's new design language at its sturdiest, the XL is the way to go. But having a two-piece design, a cabinet with a separate riser, also plays another very important role for me. I find the weight I can comfortably lift becomes more of an issue as I get older. Separating a cabinet into two pieces, along with a lighter cabinet design, has been a boon for me, and made the idea of having a home arcade an actual reality. And as I stated in a previous video, I've never once stepped into my arcade and thought, these aren't real arcade machines, there be risers everywhere, burn it to the ground. Risers for me don't take away from any pleasing aesthetics or nostalgia. I've been playing arcade machines since their earliest days, and throughout those many years, I've seen machines in all shapes, sizes, fashions, and even several cabinet variants for the same game. So when Arcade1Up came onto the scene with their own design, using an optional riser concept, it was just another arcade machine to me, something exciting and new. But no matter what one's preferences are though, it's great to see Arcade1Up innovating and offering more options to make more people's dreams come true. Physical controls. Are these Suzo Hap arcade quality? No. But I can tell you, they are decent enough, and I have a fun time playing on them. Sure, I'd love to see Arcade1Up step up their game someday and make the experience exceptional, but I can tell you, the controls are fine and make it easy to get into the games. Same can be said for the Deluxe and XL models, and though I think I may have sensed an ever so slightly different feel, especially in the buttons on the XL, which light up, they're pretty much the same. Not amazing, but acceptable. Picture quality. Outstanding. This Legacy comes with a fan favorite and coveted BOE brand monitor. And for those who don't know, Arcade1Up has had incredible display results with this brand. The contrast is great and the colors all pop, no matter what angle or position I look at it, whether right in front of it playing or anywhere in my home arcade. And because of this great picture quality, this is where you might want to consider a Legacy over one of the new 2023 Namco Deluxe or XL models. Though Arcade1Up also chose BOE monitors for their new Deluxe Pac-Man and Class of 81 cabinets, as well as a 19-inch size for their Pac-Man XL cabinet, the display quality on the Deluxes and XL don't produce the same great results. Though keep in mind, these might be the same equivalent monitor versions found in the Legacy Pac-Man 17-inch variants most likely. With these new Deluxe and XL models, Arcade1Up crafted a cabinet structure to get even closer to the look of the ones in commercial arcades, replete with an extreme slant of the monitor, which some had been asking for years. Unfortunately though, the BOE type they chose, at least on the ones I checked out, couldn't handle this new angle, producing uniformity issues. Now playing dead on directly in front of the machine, or at some particular angles while standing still, everything looks great, just like on the Legacy. But as soon as I moved my head too far to either side, or even started backing off a little ways from the machine, areas of washout appeared and moved across the display. And from most XL and Deluxe review and preview videos I've watched, the issue can clearly be seen. And what disturbed me most is it was rarely, if ever, pointed out or mentioned. And because there were so many filmed examples, it seemed way too fishy to me, and I wasn't going to acquiesce to the normal excuses like camera or lighting issues. And after seeing the Deluxes and XLs in person, for the first time, I started to question my reliance on video reviews. It seemed like many reviewers I trusted were now glossing over or making a point not to mention at all something so vital to a great arcade experience for me, with one reviewer even going so far as to say there was no washout. And this is why I'm so glad I decided to go see these cabinets in person, as sure enough, the issues I saw live mirrored what was shown in most of the videos. Now I want to give the benefit of the doubt here, as my thoughts shouldn't be taken as accusatory. I can't prove, nor do I really want to, any deceptive or malicious intent by anyone. And who knows if the quality of the three machines I tried are the same quality or condition of the machines others may have. Everything I've stated is based strictly upon my personal experiences. Monitor quality might not be a big factor to some, and some who notice the same screen uniformity issues I did may not consider them as big of a deal. Some may not be affected at all. And I can't discount the fact that some may also be relieved we no longer have to deal with an even worse monitor experience Arcade1Up put people through the year prior with some of their cabinets like the Atari Centipede Legacy, their XLs, both Shack Jam and Golden Tee, or even their Pac-Mania Legacy Edition. In 2022, instead of using BOEs in all of their machines, Arcade1Up chose the most inadequate and unsatisfactory monitors they could find, which not only produced horrible washout, but also unacceptable discoloration issues. The same issues that plagued most of the crappy vertical screen Countercades I own. However, just because the screen experience on this year's Pac-Man and Class of '81 Deluxes and Pac-Man XL are better than Arcade1Up's worst, I just can't justify downgrading the superior monitor experience I have on Namco's Pac-Man Legacy, just for 2 additional games that come with the Pac-Man Deluxe and Pac-Man XL, and a closer rendition to the original arcade cabinet shape. 1 step forward, 2 steps back is the normal trend one can often look forward to with Arcade1Up, along with their actionable mindset to provide quality in some areas while skimping on others, with more of a detriment when they decide to cheap out on critical or essential areas. That's why I think Arcade1Up may have held off so long producing a cabinet with an extreme monitor slant. And they can't hide behind the name BOE this time, given its less than stellar performance on this year's Namco Pac-Man and Class of '81 Deluxes and their Pac-Man XL. They can try to take the stance, the community demanded BOE. But BOE makes more than one type of monitor, and I'm quite sure folks would have rather had a SKU of BOE that could actually display correctly on the new cabinet design. And sure, maybe a different grade of BOE or a different monitor brand would have cost more, but I can tell you, Arcade1Up not picking the right part for the job, especially in this category, was my main reason for not upgrading. As far as monitors go, my home arcade is in a great place. A room full of machines, all with decent displays. It took me a while to get to this point, and I'm now personally done with the one bad monitor in the room experience. Having an eyesore cabinet amongst all the others drove me nuts. I completely understand that this doesn't affect everyone, and one who might envision having just one arcade machine might not have an issue with this at all. But whatever the case may be, first and foremost, get what makes you happy. Sound. Awesome. Whether it be that classic Waka Waka from the iconic Pac-Man, or the chills I personally get every time I hear the opening melody and preceding sound effects from Galaxian, taking me back to that first time fighting off swarms of aliens in that wonderful pizza parlor, the speaker system in the Legacy takes me there. And the Deluxes and XLs sound good as well, but to my ear, may be tuned a bit too loud. Arcade1Up has a history of issues when it comes to balancing sound. They can't seem to get it right all of the time. Some of their cabinets are way too loud, which was the case with my first gen Pac-Man Countercade. And some have complained that particular Arcade1Up cabinets don't get loud enough. With the Deluxes and XLs we've been discussing, I had to turn their volume down quite a bit in order to get a comfortable level for me. But at least there is one. I've heard complaints over the years that some Arcade1Up cabinets are so aggressive that even at their lowest volume, they're still too loud. Thankfully, I was able to find a sweet spot volume on both the Deluxe Pac-Man and Class of '81, along with the Pac-Man XL. I just wish Arcade1Up would have used the volume signature found on the Legacy, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? Games and gameplay. This cabinet comes with 12 games, including Pac-Man, Pac-Land, Pac-Man Plus, Super Pac-Man, Pac-and-Pal, Pac-Mania, Galaxian, Galaga, Dig Dug, Dig Dug 2, Mappy, and Rompers. I've been fortunate enough to have played every game on this cabinet on their commercial arcade counterparts, except for Rompers. Every game feels great to me on this Arcade1Up. Rompers was a pleasant surprise, as I never heard of it before, and it's really fun. Out of the 12 games, I like 10 of them really well, with Dig Dug 2, though not bad, is not a favorite. And as I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of Pac-Man Plus, though I did give it a few goes on this cabinet. But even with a majority good lineup, I can't ignore what I feel to be an objectionable business practice, to drip feed a paltry number of games per year just to shell out more unnecessary pieces of hardware. Before this Legacy, we saw Arcade1Up Namco machines come out with 2 games, then 4 games, then 7 games, then 10 games. Looking back on it now, it almost seems laughable, if it weren't so insulting. And now to try to entice me back in, they offer 2 additional games, 14 in total, on several of their new Namco iterations, including this year's Pac-Man Deluxe and Pac-Man XL. And these 2 games are huge hitters for me, Rolling Thunder and Galaga 88. But what Arcade1Up fails to understand is that some of us aren't going to simply play the upgrade shuffle, especially when they never cease to disappoint when it comes to cheaping out randomly on essential parts and software on their machines. So the only big draw for me with the new Pac-Man Deluxe and Pac-Man XL then are just the games. And deciding upon a monitor that can't display correctly in their new cabinet designs, or at the very least display as good as my Legacy edition, and making the cabinets themselves less mobile by eliminating the riser, made them an instant no-go for me. And though last year's Pac-Mania Legacy edition also had a great 14-game lineup and also included a riser, the fact that it suffered from an even worse monitor, so bad that it made the monitors in the new Deluxes and XLs look like OLEDs in comparison, Arcade1Up struck out again. So I guess I should thank them. They saved me money. Now I guess I just have to wait another 8 years or so for that Arcade1Up Namco 30-in-1 to get here. I'm not holding my breath. Oh, and just an aside, the Class of '81 Deluxe got the shaft this year when it came to the amount of games on its cabinet. It only got 12, folks. And I'm sure I could hear Arcade1Up now. But it comes with Miss Pac-Man. Well, My Legacy should have come with Miss Pac-Man as well, and not to mention 18 more games. Customer support. Like I always say, if I don't have to contact customer support, it automatically earns a Mr. Pickle. Bravo, Arcade1Up. Other annoyances beyond what I've already discussed? Yes, but not a deal breaker. The design of the Legacy cabinet makes it hard to see the full screen when standing to play if you're around the average male height in the US. When I stand to play, around 10% or so of the top of the screen is cut off from my view by the marquee. Now, I never have a problem sitting down to play a machine. For example, my Rec Room Master's Alphacade is a sit-down cabinet only. But when it comes to my riser cabinets, I instinctually walk up expecting to stand and play. But it should also be noted that if I'm playing in my arcade for a while, I eventually want to sit down to play all my machines. Thank goodness for my handy-dandy Arcade1Up stools. So this is where the Deluxe Pac-Man and Class of '81 and Pac-Man XL machines shine over the Legacy. Because of that extreme slant of their monitors, I have zero issues seeing the entire screen while playing standing up. And since I'm making comparisons here, I guess I should touch upon the lack of Wi-Fi on the Legacy versus the Deluxes and XL, which come with that functionality. When Wi-Fi editions of Namco cabinets started coming out, I was kind of bummed that my cabinet couldn't participate in leaderboard competitions. The leaderboard feature is another plus towards the Deluxe and XL models over the Legacy. But I recently heard some scuttlebutt in the community about some additional nefarious plot twists regarding Arcade1Up's use of Wi-Fi. First had to do with their Casinocade. An owner of that cabinet, YouTuber Jester Tester, big thank you goes out to him, and I'll leave some links to his videos, let the community know that he found out the hard way, not from clear messaging from Arcade1Up, who should have stated this fact everywhere, including in all of its advertising, before any pre-orders or even a single cabinet shipped, that the machine required an always online connection in order to play at all, demonstrating it on video. He reached out to Arcade1Up and shared their response, which wasn't great. They pretty much said, that's how the machine functions. Thankfully, this rose such a stink in the community that I personally believe it made its way back to Arcade1Up. Arcade1Up came back a little while later with a new statement that said they would fix the situation by providing an offline mode, making it so one wouldn't have to have the cabinet always online to even play, and said the original requirement was unintended. And if the claim, quote-unquote, unintended, sounds fishy to you, it does to me as well. They knowingly programmed the machine to function that way. Otherwise, why was it in there at all? I feel Arcade1Up only did a 180 here because they got caught and enough people complained. Now, of course, that's speculation. But my speculation is based upon Arcade1Up's myriad of missteps and misleads throughout their company's history, which I've spoken about in some of my other videos, and I'll touch upon with some additional specific examples in a little bit. Luckily, I don't own the Casinocade, but I do own some Arcade1Ups with Wi-Fi capability. And who's to say down the line they won't lock any of my machines with a mandatory always online connection requirement? And here comes the next possible crappy move in Arcade1Up's Wi-Fi fiascos: sending advertisements to people's Wi-Fi enabled cabinets. Some have posted online images of advertisements popping up on their Wi-Fi enabled Arcade1Up cabinets after a possible update. I've purposely not updated any of my Arcade1Up Wi-Fi cabinets as I want to see how everything plays out. If these pop-up advertisements are real, it's just another tick on why one may want to consider this Legacy cabinet over a Wi-Fi enabled Deluxe or XL model. Tactics like this are sneaky and downright scummy. Arcade1Up doesn't sell, at least at the making of this video, subsidized versions of their cabinets. Now I'm sure somewhere in Arcade1Up's lengthy legalese documents or Wi-Fi terms of service one may need to accept to use this functionality has some wording that mentions an over-the-air advertising clause. But to say almost no one will take the time to read every nook and cranny of this before getting their Pac-Man on is an understatement. There's a reason these terms and documents are bloated and hard to read or to understand. And just matter of fact, dropping advertisements out of the blue on cabinets that people paid full price for with no subsidy relief is crap. Companies like Amazon and Meta, formerly Oculus, have products with greatly reduced prices they're able to offer because they subsidize the balance with advertising revenue. To make Arcade1Up's pop-up advertising even the slightest bit okay, they'd need to offer a SKU of cabinet that clearly states advertising will pop up from time to time and offer it at a greatly reduced price. I'd suggest 70% lower than their cabinets without this feature. So for example, a Wi-Fi Deluxe cabinet without advertisements might run you $499, while the subsidized version with advertisements would run you around $150. For some, that might be a worthwhile trade-off, but for me, especially given Arcade1Up's history, I'll gladly wait for a sale for the non-advertised version, even if it never goes down as low as a full-priced, subsidized version. And what's crazy is, one company actually figured out how to advertise on their cabinets without being sneaky or unscrupulous. That was iiRcade. iiRcade crafted a screensaver that would splash various footage of games from their online store. Unlike what Arcade1Up might be doing, iiRcade instead were open from the start, introducing this screensaver during its development stage before any implementation, and also made it completely optional, allowing the customer to turn it off in the menu if they weren't interested. And the feature wouldn't randomly turn itself back on either during a future update. Set it and forget it. This is only one of the many examples of how iiRcade showed they cared about their customers and their company's reputation. And that's why when iiRcade referred to its customers as family, I actually felt it. And though I'm not suggesting iiRcade did everything right, their business unfortunately closed. Their intention to do right by the customer felt genuine to me, something I wish Arcade1Up could understand. With Arcade1Up, I just feel like an insignificant number on a sales spreadsheet. If Arcade1Up pop-up advertising on their Wi-Fi cabinets is true, and they want to show through actual actions that they listen to their customers like they so often claim they do, then here's my piece of advice. First, apologize for doing it in the first place and stop. Remove the ads. Then announce the feature in a live recorded show explaining not only all the benefits, but everything it will do, without using the word transparency, as that word is proven not to be synonymous with Arcade1Up and has become a running joke. And show people where they can turn the feature on if they want to participate. Make it off by default. Then going forward, anytime Arcade1Up comes up with a new feature they'd like to send to their Wi-Fi cabinets, announce it ahead of time, before it goes live, with all the details. And always give people the choice to opt out without penalty, and make it simple to do. And I get it, not all of us are the same. If you're a person who likes advertisements, most possibly for the discounts, and who doesn't like discounts, or doesn't feel like this sort of a thing is invasive the way Arcade1Up may be doing it, then they got you covered. But I, for one, don't fall into this camp. And what may not seem as big of a deal today can easily become a slippery slope tomorrow. I hope Arcade1Up realizes they don't have just one type of customer and can course correct. But alas, I don't have much faith in this happening. History's clearly shown Arcade1Up's continued lack of care for its customers. They still put out broken or hit or miss in quality products, some still awaiting fixes. Quantum on the Atari Deluxe 12-in-1, still waiting for that replacement PCB with a properly working version of the game. Putting out unfinished products, just as some who early adopted NFL Blitz and or Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and the lack of online play day one fiasco. YouTuber CoolToy has some great thoughts regarding that issue with the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet, links below. False promotion of their Fast and the Furious cabinet. I recommend watching the video review from YouTuber 19K Fox, which I'll post a link to that. And who can forget the NFL Blitz cabinet giveaway scandal when Arcade1Up teamed up with an unprincipled YouTuber. YouTube channel The Rexer Show does a very thorough breakdown of that situation, and I'm going to leave a link to his channel because he also offers some contrasting yet often poignant views regarding Arcade1Up from what you might be used to from more fan-centric channels. And though I may not always agree with everything said, which is the way it should be regarding anyone, if you value your own thoughts and opinions as an individual, I feel genuine care behind much of the messaging from his stream videos where he, and sometimes co-host YouTuber Kevgret, provide unfiltered opinions and discoveries about not only Arcade1Up, but other players in the industry. It can often be tough to hear things that go against what you love and enjoy. But if you take the time to listen to opposing views and get past some deliveries that may come off as harsh, you may just find benefit. I feel the best people I've met in this community, fellow consumers and companies alike, are the ones who put honesty first, regardless of any backlash. And when it comes to products and incentives given to members in the community by companies, I have no issue with the act itself. But when these companies or their items are spoken about afterwards, remember, the voice behind those words is power. Use that power wisely, and with honesty and respect for those who hear your words. And when it comes to companies in general being forthcoming with things that can impact the customer or its products, barring any legitimate legal issues, of course, no matter how small it may seem, it's paramount to get that information out immediately to the customer, preferably way before anything happens. Arcade1Up has definitely dropped the ball when it comes to some of their decisions regarding Wi-Fi, and leaving customers to discover it after the fact is inexcusable. Now you best believe, if any of my Arcade1Up Wi-Fi enabled cabinets start getting pop-up ads, that will definitely factor negatively in those reviews. Here's my clear Wi-Fi advice for you, Arcade1Up. First and foremost, stop using it to fix things. These cabinets should never come out with games broken, or anything broken for that matter. If you're going to charge full price day one, then make sure it works flawlessly day one. I am not your free beta tester. Second, don't toy again with the notion to make any of your cabinets require an always online connection to play. If what you're saying is true, and what happened on the Casinocade was unintended, then prove it through your actions and don't do it again. That kind of stuff is draconian and sleazy. Third, and I don't mean to belabor it, or maybe I do. If you are doing a forced over-the-air ad campaign on our Wi-Fi enabled Arcade1Up cabinets, stop it. Or at the very least, allow us the option to opt out without penalty and show us where to turn it off. And finally, instead of using the Wi-Fi to send us advertisements, patches to fix things, they'll keep doing that to fix what you've released broken, or locking down our machines to an always online connection, why not use it to send us a free game from time to time? Of course, ones with no microtransactions or any BS like that. Games with no strings. More specifically, classic ROMs that make sense and belong on each cabinet in question. Ms. Pac-Man would make an excellent addition to my Pac-Man cab. Just saying. I can tell you, I wouldn't mind that kind of Wi-Fi service. And I can almost guarantee you that many others in the community would love and welcome that as well. Consider making something like that happen. Arcade1Up could use a win. Now let's continue with the review. Is the cabinet fun? If you're looking for classic Namco fun, the Legacy has you covered. This cabinet is a great time. And with the tried and true Arcade1Up simplicity to get right into the games, enjoyment is just a couple button presses away. Same goes for the Deluxes and XL. Love it. Value for price. And now we come to the reason why I actually decided not to wait anymore and pick up the Arcade1Up Namco Pac-Man Legacy Edition. Good reviews aside, it was a sale, baby. The machine retailed for $450, but I got it during a holiday sale for $199. That deal was too crazy to pass up. If the stars didn't align that way, I'd still be waiting. For what you get here, $199 is the sweet spot. I wouldn't recommend paying anything more than that because I've seen this machine go on sale quite often. And the new Deluxes and XLs can't stack up against the Legacy for me. Even if the Pac-Man Deluxe or XL came down to a sale price that was less than this Legacy edition, I still would recommend spending a bit more and getting the Legacy. Until a true worthy Namco representation cabinet comes out, the Legacy will tide me over. Now let's pickle this one, shall we? So, adding up the tally of all the categories, how many Mr. Pickles does Arcade1Up's Namco Pac-Man Legacy Edition get? 8 Mr. Pickles out of 10. Get it. For $199, of course. At this price, this machine is a no-brainer. A good enough Pac-Man cab to accentuate that classic fever in any home arcade. What's that, Mr. Pickle? We should give a score to the Namco Pac-Man and Class of 81 Deluxes and Pac-Man XL? Okay, that sounds fair. So, adding up the tally of all the categories, how many Mr. Pickles does Arcade1Up's Namco Pac-Man and Class of 81 Deluxes and Pac-Man XL get? 6 Mr. Pickles out of 10. Vet it. When it comes to this year's Pac-Man and Class of 81 Deluxes and Pac-Man XL, no one should have to settle with a substandard monitor experience, especially when the Pac-Man Legacy Edition is still available and out there. If you're still really jonesing for one of these newer cabinets, I can't stress how important it is to see them in person so you could fully gauge the screen experience. And I get that the Pac-Man Legacy may not be a good alternative when considering the Class of 81 Deluxe. But maybe Arcade1Up's first release of Class of 81, which came with a riser, might do the job. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the original Class of 81 in person, so I don't feel comfortable getting into recommendation territory. But checking out reviews from people you trust and seeking out a physical cabinet in person is a good start. I can only imagine from the videos I've watched of the original Class of 81 and the eyes-on experience I had with its deluxe version that the original has to be a better choice in the monitor performance department. As I wrap this video up, there are 2 other cabinets in this year's Arcade1Up Namco line I'd like to touch upon. The new Legacy Pac-Man, which I briefly mentioned at the beginning, and a new Galaga Deluxe. The new Pac-Man Legacy for this year seems to be similar to the one I have, shape and design-wise, but it doesn't come with a riser, So if you want to make it taller, you'll need to buy one separately or utilize another solution. Along with that difference, instead of the printed coin door graphic on the kick plate found on mine, the new Legacy comes with those awesome logos showing the games included on the cabinet. The new Legacy also comes with the 2 extra titles found on the Deluxe and XL Pac-Man cabinets, Rolling Thunder and Galaga 88. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the new Legacy in person, but wanted to let you know about this other option. And Arcade1Up also released another similar cabinet in their Namco Deluxe line, a Galaga themed variant. The reason I didn't bring this one up in my review is because it's yet another one I haven't seen in person. It has the same extreme monitor slant as found in the other Deluxes I discussed, so the likelihood that it may suffer from the same screen uniformity issues is pretty high. I really can't conceive that the Galaga Deluxe will come with a different version of BOE that might provide a better display experience. I just don't think Arcade1Up would course correct that quickly and may not even consider it a problem. I'd say if you're interested in the Galaga variant of the Deluxe, seek it out in person, see if the screen performs okay to you. I wish I could say watch a video like I normally do, but I'm disappointed at the current narrative I've seen in many of the other Deluxe and XL cabinet videos I've watched. The lack of, and sometimes complete failure to mention any display issues, is disturbing to me. I just don't have much faith that the Galaga Deluxe videos will fare any better. Eyes on in person is my advice. But also let me clarify, I'm in no way telling anyone not to watch videos pertaining to any of these cabinets. In fact, I recommend watching them. Enjoy and scrutinize every video in this space, even mine. Sharing and partaking in the love of home arcades is what makes the community experience so great. For those wanting to see more of what my Namco Pac-Man Legacy cabinet looks like, I'm going to leave a link to my Welcome to the VideoGameVegas Arcade video, which shows the cabinet at many other views and angles. It's a beauty, and it makes a great addition to my home arcade. With that, safe travels everyone. And remember, you always have a right to your opinion, but only I have a right to mine. Until next time, stay wiggly, my friends.